Trade talks are top of mind for officials on both sides of the border as the deadline approaches for punishing new tariffs on Canadian goods. For the latest on this and more, let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Reggie Cecchini. So Reggie, the Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, he was back in Washington this week, meeting with America's top trade negotiator, Jamieson Greer. LeBlanc, as we've seen, very tight-lipped about the talks. Are we learning anything more about them?
Well, from the Canadian officials, Miranda, at least we are not learning very much. Minister LeBlanc told us yesterday as he was walking out of the U.S. Trade Office that the meetings are progressing. And when he was pressed on whether or not there's going to be a deal by the deadline next week for when those so-called Section 338 tariffs on $20 billion worth of exports come into place, he says, well, we're going to continue to have meetings. Jamieson Greer is not in Washington today, Miranda. He's in Iowa at the State Fair, meaning that there is not a key player at the table if there are going to be additional meetings. So whatever the Canadians are doing, they are keeping the cards very close to their chest. U.S. Trade Rep Jamieson Greer simply told us yesterday it's another day at USTR and that the talks are progressing. We know from industry sources there's concern here that there could be more concessions made, particularly in terms maybe of the dairy sector. We also know that the Canadian government is actively trying to work here not only to deal with getting the Section 338 tariffs off the table, but lowering sectoral tariffs and trying to deal with USMCA while partnering with the U.S. on defense and other critical partnerships here. It's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we're very, very unclear at this point as to just how far they've gone.
All right, and the trade deadline, Reggie, is just days away. But when it comes to the U.S.-Iran war, there really is no end in sight. And now there are new concerns being raised about U.S. service members who have been deployed for months in the Middle East on board an aircraft carrier at sea. What are the issues there, and how is the Pentagon responding?
Right. So the USS Abraham Lincoln, it actually set sail from California to take part in a mission in the Pacific and then was rerouted into the Middle East. And it was supposed to come back to shore in May. It has been now more than 250 days. There's been more than 40 consecutive days where the crew on board has been in active combat. And there is reporting now from crews on board that some people have tried to go overboard. There are messages that are coming out from crew's family trying to raise this as an issue both to the Pentagon and to the administration as a whole. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has spoken to some U.S. media outlets where he has pushed back, not really addressing the fact that there are food issues, there are water issues, that there are morale issues, arguing that this is simply part of the exercise and he has respect for those that are on board. But there's obviously a significant concern here for the mental health of those that are on board. There's 5,000 people, service members, on this ship. The Pentagon is not saying anything about these alleged suicide attempts, but it is obviously raising significant concern here for how much longer it can stay at sea if there's going to be a replacement for it. And again, it goes back to the question here about the war in Iran, Miranda, as to whether or not this is going to find itself coming to a quick close anytime soon.
All right, Reggie, let's move on to the courts now because there's always a few cases going on involving Trump. One of them this week involved a ruling over the president's executive order regarding mail-in voting restrictions. So what did the judge rule there?
Right. So, I mean, if we go back to the beginning of Trump's administration, he has really tried to go after mail-in ballots, arguing that they're fraudulent. He points back to the election that he lost in 2020, suggesting that states like California were harvesting ballots, that they were hiding ballots, trying to say that mail-in ballots make elections less safe, even though we need to point out that Donald Trump himself votes in Florida by mail from Washington, D.C. He signed an executive order essentially trying to have the United States Postal Service not send ballots out to states that wouldn't hand over a voter roll with citizens that were eligible to take part in the election. This judge says that Congress never gave USPS the ability to carry out that kind of a measure here, and that it would ultimately be sowing more confusion in the run-up to the election, with a potential here for the administration, or at least a fear that it could change the rules on the eve of midterm. So at least for now, mail-in ballots are going to continue across the United States, and this is just another blow to kind of the ongoing exercise here for this administration and for the president himself to claim that there's fraud within American democracy.
All right, now there was a bit of a win for the president this week, Reggie, when it comes to the iconic arts venue, the Kennedy Center. You know, there's been a battle over getting Trump's name on the building one way or another. So what's happening there?
Right, so a court originally ruled that it couldn't be the John F. Kennedy and Donald J. Trump Center for Performing Arts. Trump's name had to come off. For the last couple of months, we've seen shrouding across the front of the building, and we now have learned that the administration is going to try to go around the courts and put an inscription there, keeping it as the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts, but then add inscribed in the wall, renovated by President Donald J. Trump. And there are people who are criticizing this as just an effort to kind of skirt around the rules to ensure that Donald Trump's name winds up on the wall. It's likely this is going to face a court challenge. We've also learned that the board is going to keep this Kennedy Center closed for 2 years, with the exception of a small part of it. They claim that it's for renovations, but of course critics are hitting back to say that the ticket sales are so low now since the Trump administration has put a board in place to take control of the Kennedy Center that there's simply nobody going there, and that's why they're trying to use renovations as a shield to say that's why it's going to be closed. So it's a temporary victory for Donald Trump. The question is it going to face a court hearing? All
right, there's never a shortage of stories coming out of Washington. Reggie, thank you so much for the breakdown. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
That is our Washington correspondent, Reggie Cecchini.